Okay, I think we're ready to begin. Welcome to the June 20th Finance Committee meeting. I call the meeting to order and would like to announce that we have one presentation, which is our very favorite budget presentation. So I'll turn this over to Ms. Bray.
So this is either the final or next to the last budget presentation for 1920. And really not a great deal has happened or changed since last month. So you're going to see a lot of slides that are pretty similar with just a few changes. As of May 20th, projected ending fund balance for the current year, $4.9 million. Starting at the same place we had in total revenue, expenditures, and the fund transfers of $3.12 million. Then moving forward, looking at the end of June 30th of 2020, $1,699,263. And fund transfers, I will probably speak of this a little bit later on, of only $1,456,669. We have a few changes just to remind everyone. If revenues decrease, fund balance decreases. If it increases, fund balance increases. But when it's expenditures, a decrease in expenditures and cost will increase fund balance. And when expenditures go up, obviously fund balance will decrease. Really, the only adjustment that we have is a stipulation that we're going to talk about tonight. We've discussed a little bit. It's for 1125 Virginia, the ADP building. We've reached an agreement with the owner on that to settle an appeal for the last 3 years, and it will cost us $53,172 refund. And with that approval on Monday night, that will become a payable and accrue to the current year, although I'm sure we won't get the check out that quickly. So, bless you. Of course, after making that adjustment, fund balance for this year now is at $4,878,726. And I just want everyone to know that even though this is the only adjustment we've made, we've been looking at earned income tax over the last month. May was higher than we had anticipated. I was thinking and spoke with Dr. Yanni that perhaps we'd have some money to, good news there. However, the total month of June, we've received less than $30,000, so there will be no change. I just use that as an example because we do monitor and continue to look at real estate transfer taxes and other such things. So, looking at next year with that adjustment of $53,172, we did have some good news in IDEA allocation. We had budgeted $500,000 late last week. We learned that that increase, the allocation based on the number of students, has increased by $119,000. IDEA revisions, when we started digging into it, we had to make some adjustments. We had some disproportionality, which requires that we set aside approximately 15% of the IDEA budget for staff development and I believe education. So we've had to make some adjustments in the budget for that 15%, which is about $90,000. And then we needed to change some allocations in supplies and other areas. So what you're hearing mainly for next year, again, is total adjustments of $42,790, which doesn't make a huge impact on the projected fund balance at the end of next year. But it was something that we just found out last week. So looking ahead, or just actually not too far ahead because June 30th is right around the corner, still at around $4.9 million of fund balance. And one more time I will reiterate, that does not include the $3.6 million of fund balance for assessment appeals or rate stabilization, the two amounts there, about $1 million for assessment appeals and the 2.6 for rate stabilization for medical. Oh, and I also want to highlight the fund transfers of the $3.1 million, just to give you a history of that. Again, that $1,458,000 that we're talking about for next year, that was transferred. $250,000 for a budgetary reserve, and we transferred some money to debt service that we're planning on using $447,000. In the future, that's set aside money for payment of debt for Sandy Run. Then we've had some one-time revenues from transfer taxes, as well as finally in that $3.1 million of transfers and savings. Lastly, we had some debt service payment was lower than what we had budgeted for Sandy Run, so that was also transferred. So that's a large amount of our total expenditures will be reported for the year. Again, looking ahead to 2020, not much of a change, still around $1,700,000 with a fund transfer of only $1,458,000. Again, it's been the plan all along that eventually that money will be used to fund debt for Sandy Run Middle School. What may occur this year, though, is because we're setting aside so much money for the requirement for escrow with the township, we may need to go out and borrow that money a little bit sooner than what we might have planned on doing. So early in 2020, we may need to be borrowing that money, and more of it may need to go toward debt, and less of it will be transferred to capital for next year. Maybe. One other thing I should point out in the revenue for next year, at this point in time, it is still including a 2.3% tax increase, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. I think I predicted that while we initially had the same number of approved homesteads earlier this year, we have had some changes. We, since May 1st, we have had someone file the appropriate paperwork, a disabled veteran. So now we have made some adjustments, and that happens throughout the process, and sometimes it even happens after the first of the year, and then we have to keep track of that and take that into consideration when the calculation is made for the subsequent year. So Ms. Baldessano did the recalculations. The assessed value is now $10,261, and the dollar reduction is $353.63. But that dollar reduction is again impacted by the tax increase. So again, that's assuming a 2.3%. If we make an adjustment on that, those numbers will change slightly. Last month we approved a very large assessment appeal stipulation when $19 million rolled off of our assessment base for Prudential. And we talked about this on an earlier slide. So for the year that we're concerned with, 1920, we have a credit for real estate taxes of $1,165,918. And then there's the annual loss of the reduction of $19 million of assessed value of $650,457. Now, the credit piece is the way that we're repaying the refund. We didn't have to write out a check, which is a good thing when you're borrowing money, because the more cash you have on hand, the more favorable Wall Street looks at it. So it was excellent that we didn't need to use the $960,000 to liquidate, take care of that stipulation. But there is a hangover because we're not wiping it all out in the year of 19 and 20. So assessment appeals are hitting loss of revenue of $1,869,547, and I see Mr. Robsky.
Yeah, just a one question. You said the annual loss would be 650,457 for Prudential.
Correct.
That one property alone.
Correct.
What is their new tax amount annually?
I would have to calculate. I know I had that on my computer, but, well, it's close, excuse me, it's close to $1,165,000 because that's the amount of the credit for next year. In other words, Prudential will not be paying us anything for 1920 as far as tax revenue.
So their tax bill was cut by, what, 40%?
Probably not quite that high.
Their property is that much less?
Yes.
We,
Their assessment is $19 million less. It was, if you remember the stipulation, the old assessment was around $53 million, and it was very close to, and I'm doing total recall now, but I believe it's around $34 million is what the new amount is moving forward. Okay?
correct, Jim?
No, that's 1125, much smaller one.
Yeah, that's true.
So anyway, next year we have a hole in our budget of $1,869,000. But, as I said, there's a hangover effect. We're not finished after next year. We still have a credit to finish paying off the following year. And in that year, for 2021, you'll still be wrestling with a reduction of that property, what they're going to owe you, $723,000. Yes, Mr. Dr. Luminowitz, sorry.
Based on the audit from last year, Prudential is our largest real property taxpayer in Montgomery, in
That's
Upper
correct.
Rutland. Okay, so their assessed value went from $53,298,000 to $37,792. A big hit, and it drops them down to the third. They'll be the third highest, or second highest.
Right. And I believe that may be on multiple parcels. They have another small parcel because I remember the amount of stipulation being slightly less than that.
Okay.
So thank you for the additional information. But for the year of 2021, just to remind everybody, there's still $723,000 of a credit that will be owed. We will collect a little bit on from them in that year, and again the annual loss. So we're still down about 1.4 million in 2021.
Is the credit just 2 years?
That's all it will take because
That's
it's
why
a
they're going
large
to give us a little
project.
bit. We have a small bill due
Yes,
in
in 2021.
2021. Okay.
Maybe I should go back just for a second. Prudential was our largest outstanding appeal, so it's good to have it taken care of. And we've taken care of a couple of other smaller ones now, 1125, and we're getting close on another property. But there are still several others that need to be dealt with. We've been talking about for years an internet auction and some other appeals that will cost some money, nothing to the magnitude of Prudential. So now we are looking at the real estate tax scenarios for 19 and 20. The assessment is post impact of Prudential, that large assessment appeal. It's collected at a 97%. That's what we've been averaging. If you add in delinquents, it would be higher than that, but we're not considering delinquents at this point in time. Average assessment of $195,000 is underneath the annual residential increase on the right-hand side. So obviously, as your CFO, I would indicate, and based on the previous two slides, and the costs of construction, and don't forget, while we've been focused on Sandy Run, we have other projects going on. A 2-year project at Fort Washington, windows are being replaced, that's moving along, we didn't discuss that tonight, and electrical work at Jarretttown and air conditioners being installed. But with that, conversation regarding the tax rate would be greatly appreciated so that we could have the resolution prepared for Monday night. We don't need to discuss that tonight. We can wait and move through the agenda if you prefer, if you want to give me some direction, and we can talk about that at the end when we're doing the resolution. Any questions?
Does the budget now include all the personnel changes? You already,
Yes.
it's already in there. It was in last month?
Yes, it was.
All right.
Yeah, the
Sorry, I forgot.
No, that's quite all right. The 7 retirements that we've
Yeah.
talked about, there's not been anything additional
Okay.
administratives, yes.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions? Stan?
Yeah, don't you think that 881 million is a little low for the the balance, uncommitted fund balance for 2020?
Of course I do, I'm the CFO. Yes.
What would you recommend is a reasonable fund balance?
Well, we've been having these discussions, since November, and obviously, the higher the fund balance, certainly the better. We're allowed to have 8% uncommitted fund balance at the end of the year, and Wall Street looks favorably on the higher your fund balance, the amount of cash that you have on hand. So this number is conservative. I certainly hope that there's going to be more than that. And one of the presentations, I believe last month, I did indicate, compared to what we had budgeted last year and where we think we are now, there was about, I think, a $3 million swing. But even at that, on a $107 million budget, 8% of $100 million would have a fund balance of $8 million.
We've been talking in policy, and I don't have the policy number off the top of my head, but the target is between 5 and 8% of expenditures for the uncommitted portion of the fund balance.
And it's in the 600s. I don't know if I think it's 601 or 602.
A question about that, is that for in the budget, or is that at the end of the year?
That would be at the end of the year. Ideally, we wouldn't have to use fund balance at all to balance.
Any other comments or questions?
I just have a quick question on the assessment appeal money, the $960,279 that we never touch, that we haven't touched, I'm sorry. At what point would you recommend at any time that we would use some of that money to pay for any of these appeals?
Well, anytime that you don't have to use your cash and you can work out a credit situation, that's certainly preferable, again, from Wall Street's perception and really everyone's. So, but we still have, as I indicated earlier, 3 appeals that you might want to end up dipping into that and help liquidate, pay for, rather than giving credits. But that money could be uncommitted and used for something else if it was so desired, but I would not think you would want to do that because there may be an owner, and one of them, I'm thinking of actually 2 of them, that may not at all be interested in credits.
My instinct is we would start using that when we have less than $960,000 of outstanding assessment appeals, which would not, exactly, yeah.
And just
You said more than, okay.
Yep. And I know we will be looking at an increase to the rate stabilization fund too. We passed a motion that we will, once the audit is done, we're going to hopefully transfer some additional funds to the rate stabilization, right?
We certainly have over the last 5 years, I believe it is now. But it will not only be at the end of the audit, by then the consortium will have been reconciled and we'll have a better idea what's in that balance as well. Part of the reason for increasing the rate stabilization over the last few years is we didn't have much money in the trust. And we're certainly not anywhere close to 6 months of premium put aside, but we're in better shape in that department than what we were.
In terms of rate stabilization, I just have to go on record as saying one hemophiliac or one premature baby and our healthcare costs will soar. So I think we have to be very careful and not rob Peter to pay Paul and say we're not going to put more money in there.
No, I reminded the board that we were planning to put more money in there.
Please do not misunderstand.
No.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm worried that we think, well, if we don't put so much money over there, we can offset something. And I don't want to be foolish in that way.
And the other thing is, we had really good experience with healthcare this year, and we can't plan on that. I mean, an increase of 3.88% for both prescription and medical is really unheard of.
Dr. Levinas, did you have more?
just to know, when we talk about fund balance, as Dr. Yanni was suggesting, if you look at 18-19, the projected uncommitted is nearly 4.9. The expenditures are about 100 million, so that's pretty easy to do the math.
It is.
So we ended up at an okay spot. We would want that to probably be a little bit higher.
With a credit opinion of AA3, it needs to be higher.
Right.
Well, since we're getting to the 11th hour of the budget decision-making, I would like to entertain some conversation and have a kind of a straw poll of where we all stand individually. Mr. Sirota, I think you have some interesting information for us, though, that we could consider.
Just to be clear, you want to do that now and not later when we do the resolution?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, what I have is I've been paying attention to, as I do every year, our neighboring districts and where they are with their final budgets. Now, of course, it's not the end of June yet, and most of them haven't actually passed their final budgets yet, but I have proposed final budgets for everybody, and I have final budgets for the few that have passed one. It's possible I've missed one somewhere, but we are, the entire range of tax increases we are considering would put us 5th out of 15 of the 15 districts that are in Lower Montgomery County. That's sort of Methacton and North Penn on down. It's 15 districts. We are 5th of 15. Regardless, that's 5th lowest of 15. No matter whether we go, all the way down to the lowest we've talked about is 1.99. The highest we've talked about is 2.19. That entire range would be 5th out of 5th lowest out of 15.
Yeah, we've actually talked about 2.3, I guess. But you're saying that
2.3 would put us tied for 6th with many other districts.
Okay. So I don't know if everyone is tuned in to having a comfort level for this, but I'd like to go around and ask so that we can give the administration something to really work with. I'll be happy to start. I would like to see the tax increase be 1.99. However, I fully understand the difficulties that we're facing, and I would definitely be able to support a 2.19 increase. I think that we need that.
So, in our previous discussions, I said I would like to start at, to support the full amount, 2.3. I would be willing to go to 2.19, somewhat in the hopes that many more of my colleagues would join in that, supporting that amount. So the reasons for that are, some of the things we've already discussed and seen today, uncertainty about the Sandy Run project, potentially rising costs in that area, other facility needs we may have in the near future, assessment appeals, and the fact that we have ongoing committed costs that go up each year, like salaries, benefits, medical, PSERS. I think we could handle the lower tax increase this year and still balance our budget if we use some of our fund balance. But doing that will put us in worse shape going forward because each year compounds what we don't have, I guess. As a board, we're often criticized about not planning ahead. And I think this is an occasion where planning ahead means we stay pretty close to the Act 1 index with the tax increase and so that's what I would support.
Thank you, Joan. Dr. Levinowitz, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I know I've been stating that I would support a 1.99. However, for various reasons, I would support a 2.19. This year, we're very fortunate for the property tax reduction that there's going to be an additional $10 or $11. If you look at the difference of 219, 209, we're talking maybe $20. So what the taxpayer will see is not going to be that dollar difference, but because of the additional money we have in the property tax reduction, the bottom line will be a 1/10% difference rather than the 0.2, if I'm making sense with that. And I do think that we're very fortunate to have Dr. Yanni here, and I know he has a lot that he wants to get accomplished over the next few years. Staffing, professional development, and I really believe that we need to trust and support him in that. So can we go back to look at it, tax increases below 2? We have to look and see what's happening with the developments in Upper Dublin. They are, as we've said, they're not there till they're there, and when you look at a prudential hit, it takes away almost an entire development in terms of the additional revenue. So at this point, I would support 219.
Mark, would you care to speak on this? I'm sorry. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Amy.
No problem. I think everyone knew where I stood anyway, because I said it the last time, but I'm also at the 2.19. Of course, we'd all like to be lower. We committed to being below the index. It's below the index, but we have to be realistic about some of the challenges that we're facing, all of which you eloquently outlined. So I concur.
Sorry about that, Amy. Mark.
I didn't know, did I miss the straw drawing part of the meeting when we picked the order? Because there's usually this fine dance of, an art goes last, but anyway. Yeah, it's in committee. So I've said several times that my number is 207 because it's 90% of the actual index this year, and I still like that number. It does put me in the middle, and I'm not trying to deliberately be a swing vote or anything, but this is a hard year for me. There's very compelling reasons. There always are compelling competing priorities for lower or higher, and but they're particularly poignant this year, I think. And the fact of the matter is I can live with anything in this range, but the number I would prefer is still 207.
Thank you for that. Stan?
Brenda, is year-end balance include any tax revenue, the tax increase?
Yes, it does. And the revenue number that is included for 2019-20 includes a 2.3% tax increase.
So if we didn't have that additional revenue, we would have zero balance or negative.
Lower.
If you look at the last slide, it
Yes.
shows the deltas.
You're right.
Right.
You're correct, because the revenue is 1.8, almost $1.9 million.
It's 81,000 would be the difference of the 2.3 and the 2.19. So that you would have to make that adjustment in revenues for 81,000.
Yes,
Right.
That's correct, but that's not what I heard Mr. Ropsky ask, and perhaps I
Okay.
interpreted it incorrectly.
Yeah, so anything below 2.3, that fund balance is going to be lower.
Yes, and the amount, approximately $81,000 if we're going to 2.19.
So if we go lower on the tax increase, we got to cut someplace in the budget then.
The fund balance is lower. The fund balance is
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah, but it's already too low now.
Well,
At 2.3, it's way below 5%.
but I think because Ms. Bray does budget conservatively, if we would go back and see what we projected last year, the fund balance to be for the 18-19 budget, we would see a similar number that we see now. So fortunately, as the year progresses, we tend to have an increase. I think you said approximately
It was approximately $3 million.
3 million. So even so,
The swing or the difference.
yes, 3, and that's what you want to do in a budget. The worst
Yeah.
scenario would be if it was minus $3 million.
Well, of the 1 year, it was minus $2 million.
Right. Right, so that's why that number should be higher, but it's not real. 1.7 is what we have.
1.7
Right.
is the estimate
Is the
at the
estimate
end,
right now, so,
a year from now.
yeah,
That's
which
the
means it hopefully, if we budget it correct, the way we have done in the past conservatively, it hopefully will end up being 4.7 unless we have some significant bad news,
Or a significant event.
significant event,
That
right?
costs us a lot of money.
All right.
So Stan, I take that, yeah,
I don't have to. Do I have to?
well, we're hoping you can, yes.
Part of the issue, and just in case everyone doesn't know, is Monday night, it has to be a quick turnaround because it's June 24th when we vote, and a lot of things have to be accomplished over the next 4 days, one of which is tell the tax collector what the tax rate is going to be in an effort to get the bills out by July 1st. So if we could have at least what we believe to be direction tonight, would be incredibly helpful to the business office. That's why we're asking for this conversation.
Can I jump in? Last year, the number, the estimated fund balance at the end of 2018-19 at this meeting last year was $1.3 million. Yeah, so,
I
and
would go with, all right, I would go with the 2.19.
Thank you, Stan. Titia?
All right. Our taxpayers, I think, deserve as low possible a tax rate as we can possibly do, preferably zero, but I think given our current situation, that's totally unrealistic. Having San Miran as a big uncertainty and also the intent to put money to support educational opportunities. I think our 2.19 is where we need to go. Reluctantly on my part, and I think on everybody's part. Wherever we are with respect to our neighboring districts, I think we owe it to our taxpayers to be very prudent with the money, and I would like to continue to explore opportunities especially for people who are on fixed incomes, to see what we can do to, if there's anything we can do to address that hardship. At the same time, our community is looking for really strong educational programs, and we have to put our money there to support those programs. And with that comes staffing, with that comes professional development. None of that comes for free. And yeah, we need to pay for that. So 2.19, I would support.
Thank you. I know we're missing a couple of board members, but I think, yeah, given the circumstances, I think we have enough for the 2.19 to pass if we were to vote on it tonight. Right,
Six. Number six.
right. So,
I was a reading
no,
specialist, not a math
I
teacher.
changed. I went on to 2.19. Yeah, yeah. So I think 2.19 seems to be the number that is agreed upon, at least by the people who are here, that we could give our guidance on.
And so we will move forward tomorrow to prepare the resolution in that fashion and recalculate the homestead and do all the necessary things to bring on Monday night, knowing that there could be a change. And thank you, Amy, really, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bray. Are there any other comments or questions on this subject while we're here? If not, we'll move on. Do we have any announcements, Ms. Bray?
Now this evening,
We do have minutes from May 16th. If you have any comments or changes to the minutes, please let Brooke know so that they can be corrected. We have the committee recommendations here to deal with, the treasurer reports, which we do every month. Do you have any comments about this, Ms. Bray?
nothing about the food service report. I just want to call everyone's attention that fund transfers that were approved in May were not able to be implemented or finalized, so that number is a little bit low in the treasurer's report, but the transfers have taken place at this point.
Are there any comments or questions on the treasurer's report? Okay, there being none, we'll move that forward then. Now we have a whole bunch of bids to discuss, and I think it's fine if we just let you describe them as they go down. We don't have to do them individually.
I'm actually not sure that we really, other than to address the amounts, if you wanted to
Right.
go through them. This are bids that we have done locally, as well as through the IU, using a cooperative purchasing agreement with them. And each of the amounts, some are broken into elementary and into secondary, but this is just a formality and we need approval on Monday night. Overall, it's a small percentage of the budget.
I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at the bids, but you should look at them and see if you have any questions about. Does anyone have any comments or questions now about any of these, Titia?
I just want to check that all these bids are within the budget, right?
Yes, I mean, they come out of
Right.
next year's budget and we compare them from year to year, and yes.
But sort of in the same vein as Ms. Vitale was asking for the spreadsheet, if we would put the numbers side by side. I didn't do that for every single one of them, but I assume you did.
As far
These
as
bids meet.
As far as going against budget items, we do not bid them, or excuse me, we do not keep track of each of the budget items by bid. Each one of these items will end up being dispersed across multiple buildings because we are required to charge by source code and buildings. So, for example, if we were to look at the custodial IU bid for all the trash bags and the host of other things that are listed there, the amount for the district will be $35,000, but some of them will go to each of the buildings, and we don't do that finite of a budget comparison.
Although maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I thought there was also an attempt for each of the buildings to have their budgets. Is that, how does that relate to these
Yeah,
bids?
so for buying power, we buy at one time and then charge out to the buildings what is allocated to the buildings.
And they also have an impact. We determine how much we're going to buy based on their needs. So very, very early in the year, using the buildings, they determine what art supplies they're going to need and what they're willing to pay for, because and Ms. Baldessano can tell you volumes about. We put together lists of items, cost based on previous year, and so they go out to the teachers, and then the building principals or the department heads approve those, and then we put them together, as Dr. Yanni said, for the bid. And in some cases, we actually send them to the IU where there's more buying power, and they become part of that, such as paper.
So, but these bids are within what each of the collective or the separate buildings has.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I wanted to give Ms. Bray a really nice retirement gift, so I sent an email the other night to the leadership team that said, moving forward, if a principal or a director is running low on funds in a certain area of their budget and they need to do a budget transfer, they'll actually be coming to the finance committee to talk about that budget transfer as another way of helping principals and directors and other administrators really understand where the money is inside of their budget. So I can tell you that alone is making everyone look very critically at what they're buying.
No, that's exactly what I was hoping we would move to, and I mean, based on the conversations and documentation I've seen. So to see that and moving forward, I really appreciate it.
And so do I.
Dr. Levinowitz?
Yeah, and Brenda, the big issue about hoarding various types of supplies, you're going to tell me that we are doing a much better job in terms of identifying what's being squirreled away? Toilet paper, paper towels, paper, are we?
Those items are actually inventoried,
Okay.
custodial, so yes, and we've been doing that
Paper?
for a number of years. Paper we do not, although I think the principals and everyone's doing a better job with that. One building actually ran out this year, and so we did a transfer internally from another building, and we did the budget transfer to appropriately charge who needed it and who didn't. What Dr. Yanni just described, and the fact that the principals now for the first time really understand how to build a budget, well, at least they have the first glimpses of it. It drives home the fact that you may not need, and I'm going to pick on art right now, 14 different shades of green ceramic glaze. So I think that some of those items and purchases will be changing in the future. I think we saw some of that this year, but I think that will be a learning process that will continue.
When the principals met with us, they met with the cabinet administrators to review their budgets. They had to come with an inventory done to make sure that we were not overbuying, because sometimes I feel, I'm going to pick on elementary teachers because I was one and I loved a good folder. You could go in my closet at any time and there would be hundreds of folders. So as we built our needs-based budgets this year, we said we don't want you to skimp on anything you need, but we also don't want to overbuy just because we're going to stockpile things away.
Okay,
Wait, I got a question.
go ahead, Stan.
So I'm looking at the paper IU bid. Okay, it says WB Mason, $47,000, 372. That's for just what, copying paper?
Copying, printing paper, white usually.
And that is a bid for a certain amount of paper guaranteed, or is it, that's what they're estimating they'll spend is 37,000 to 47,000, and then, but it could be below that based upon purchases or use?
No, it will come in. We
It will
will
come
be
in.
placing an order and it will be distributed to the buildings based upon what they've requested.
And I see there's something there, it says there for Linden Meyer Monroe, 700.
It could be different color paper, different size paper,
And
based on what the requests were from the building.
different color, different sizes.
That wasn't a
and-
bid, right?
Oh, yes.
That was a bid?
Yes. Not that we did it, again, the IU. A number of the school districts put together and IU coordinated it. So yes, we took part. It was an item on the bid list that we could utilize.
Just looking at, it's like, it's just paper, you know, maybe we can just work with one vendor instead of 5, 6.
The prices when you're doing this large of a volume is much better than what you could get by just going to one vendor and say, we're going to buy all of your paper. Again, with all the school districts in Montgomery County getting together, this is the way to go. And occasionally, you know, we look at it and test our bidding process and what we get, but on paper, all of these items, we do get the best price.
Okay, well, thank you for that. If there aren't any other comments or questions, we'll move on. Item N, actually we have a bunch of insurance renewals. The big one, commercial package.
Every year at this time, we go through all the various types of insurances that we bid, and certainly they are included. I was going to give you an overall number for these bids for all of the different premiums, from the total commercial package to the auto package that would be covering all of our buses and vans, and then there's an umbrella premium, errors and omission of, for the school board premium that has to do, well, it sounds like it's related just to the school board. It's really related to all the employees, and special education is also involved.
Has that one gone up?
That one has gone up quite a bit. One of the largest ones, it actually has gone up from about $88,000 to the $99,065. But that's based on claims and experience of other school districts as well. We were fortunate for the last few years. E&O had been somewhat flat, not this year. Overall, as we continue, we have a small cyber liability. You may ask, well, what is that? It has to do with transferring funds, trying to protect us from individuals posing as school board members or superintendents. We've had both of those cases happen, telling Ms. Balsano or one of our other employees to, you know, send money. Yes. But we do carry a liability to help cover us in case that does happen. But we also do a lot of training, and while I pick on Jen because she's sitting next to me, we've trained payroll and a number of other people regarding and accounts payable on this particular point as well. We in Upper Dublin have student accident premium that is for primarily for our athletes, and but that's a $13,500 amount, but that has stayed flat. And because we have several trips overseas a couple of years ago, I recommended that we move to an international travel package premium, and that's about $5,000. That did not change for this year. And then there's one other small amount that's not in here, but I'm going to make the recommendation for $1,760. It has to do, it's another type of liability coverage related to hostile acts, without getting into all the jargon that goes along with that. That's always alarming. And our broker has recommended it. So in a number of districts I checked, again, the amount is only $1,000.
That'll be included on Monday?
Yes. Overall, we talked about the increases for E&O, but overall insurance, including the small $1,760, it's about a $20,000 increase, or about 4.16, which is high when you compare it back to the last few years. But that's a trend. This year, I will tell you, I was put through the exercise of dealing with a lot of questionnaires, and not just me, but people services as well as HR, just because of cost and examining what the risk is for school districts. We've had Utica since 1988, and I still had to go back and actually ended up sending them documentation that we had exchanged when certain things were going on. That's how in-depth the application process was.
Thank you, Ms. Brake. Does anyone have any comments or questions on any of the renewals of the insurance? Stan?
Are any of our school buildings in floodplains? I mean, do we have flood insurance?
We do have one in floodplains, and it happens to be Sandy Run Middle School. And every year in November, we have FEMA. It's required that we have that insurance for FEMA. And so you may not recall, but last November, that's when the policies due. And actually there are two, because we currently have two buildings in the floodplain, or close to the floodplain, not really in it, but we're required to carry the insurance. Excellent question.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on the language. The property includes some floodplain. The buildings are not in the
That's-
floodplain. The
I
whole property is
corrected
not in the
myself, yeah.
floodplain, yeah, but part of the property is in the floodplain.
And to that end, a few years ago, the insurance actually went down.
And then I'm looking at I'm looking at the umbrella policy for, I think it was $33,000.
Yes.
Okay, when does that umbrella policy kick in? What amount does that kick in at?
I would have to, I'll have that information for you on Monday evening.
That's all, that's all, thanks.
Any other questions?
I think it's $1 million, but I don't like to just,
Right.
so I will let you know.
Thank you for that. If there aren't any other comments or questions, we'll move on to the appraisal services agreement with Suburban Realty.
Once again, we're discussing assessment appeals, but this is one of, on the other side of the ledger, if you will. It's an appeal that the school district filed. It's for the property that's listed, and we're getting ready for a trial conference in July, and we need to finish the appraisal for $4,000.
Any comments or questions on this item? If not, then we'll move this one forward. That's okay. Then we have next a settlement stipulation for 1125 Virginia Drive.
Which is the amount of $53,172.
Right.
Thank you very much. And that's what we already discussed at 1125 Virginia, or ADP as it's often referred to.
Okay, any comments on this, questions? We'll move this forward then, if that's okay as well. And now comes to the transfer to capital projects.
Yes, a small amount, $59,500 is being recommended to transfer to capital projects from the general fund. This is resulting from the sale of 420 Delaware Avenue in the Fort Washington Office Park. This property is another one that we had a successful reverse appeal on a few years ago. And the main thing that I want to point out to the board in this situation is that the amount of the sale is very close to what the current assessed value is. So that's positive for us.
Yeah. Yes. Any comments, questions?
Is that money earmarked for any capital improvement project, or is it up to us to decide later on in the year what to spend with that?
That particular amount is just not earmarked to any project. It just needs to go to capital for ongoing capital improvements, repairs,
And
a school bus.
it's not by the end, the capital project is an ongoing fund, so it doesn't have to be by the end of the year.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Well, he said
Thank
that
you.
we have to decide by the end of the
No.
year, and
Right.
we do not.
We just have an agreement to do any real estate transfer funds and put that directly into the capital.
We do not, that's not policy. What we usually do, real estate transfer funds are quite substantial if we were to go back and look at the treasurer's report, over $1 million this year. But when we have one-time large amounts, usually to commercial properties, not the sale of homes, over the past few years we've developed the philosophy of transferring those to capital.
So we don't have to do this.
We do not. You do not.
We could put this in the budget. Well, operating budget, right? As a,
Well,
as a revenue?
If, not, it is a revenue.
Yeah, but
But
we
we could leave it in the general fund at the end of the year. Yes, and it would fall to fund balance or become part of fund balance. Or it could be transferred to capital for
I
different
think it's a good
expenditures.
idea to go into the capital projects fund. I think that's prudent for us at this point.
So in the treasurer's report each month, the very last page, if you miss that, you should always look at that page. I find it very informative. It lists the monies that we have in the capital projects fund, in the 2018 bond fund. Second 2018 bond fund will probably be in there next month, and also debt service. So in capital projects, we currently have approximately $6.8 million that just sits there that we use for various capital projects.
Like we just talked about buses
Like the
today,
buses,
for
like the buses, yeah. And that's-
Or, excuse me, the windows.
The windows and the air
Fort Washington,
conditioning.
we just received a large
Yep.
invoice because they're being produced.
Right, and
So-
the air conditioning throughout the three elementary schools.
Which will cost us $615,000.
Yeah, that's a good page to look at all the time, see what our balances are.
Are we good then to move that on? The transfers? Okay, and then last we have the Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Act resolution.
So in addition to the resolution that will need to be on there for the tax increase as of Monday night and have that, and that probably will be the first motion on under finance, we also need to do the Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Act resolution as well. So we have all the amounts that we will fill in, and there will be no green and yellow on Monday night.
Any comments or questions on this act resolution? If that's okay, we'll move it forward. Okay. We are now at the point for community input. If there's anyone who wants to come forward with community input. I see no one coming forward. If there are no other comments or questions, then our next finance committee meeting will be, oh, we have one more comment. Hold on a second.
This is Brenda's last Operations and Finance Committee meeting. Just want to thank her for keeping us going for these so many years. 10 years? 10 years. All right, thank you.
Yes,
Ditto.
thank you,
Ditto.
Ms. Ray.
Thank you.
We are grateful. So with that in mind, we will see you on Monday, however. One more, yes.
Can't pass it off to Andy yet.
When I asked Brenda several months ago if she was counting the days, she said no. She was counting committee and legislative.
Oh, there you go.
Although now we're so close, I'm actually even counting the days too.
The minutes.
Yeah, now I am. Thank you very much. It has been a real joy and privilege to serve the residents and the board of Upper Dublin School District for the last 10.5 years. And a very positive experience and a great way to end my career. I'll be watching.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Ray. Our next committee meeting is Thursday, July 25th at 7 p.m. and immediately following operations. We are now adjourned.
Put it on your